visible, but it does work.
Mirror the screen.
No, both. Okay, everything's working. I'm gonna back this up a little. Okay. All right, it's in view. Yeah, so welcome everybody to the Made in Chicago track. We have 4 great speakers today. And we start off with Christina Whitehouse from Lane Uprising. She's going to tell us all about 50 shades of bike lane obstructions.
All right. So thank you for coming right after lunch and finding it. So 50 Shades of Bike Lane Obstructions. I am Christina Whitehouse. I'm the founder of Lane Uprising. Has anyone heard of it prior to today? Okay, all right, fair enough. So full disclosure, spoiler alert, there are 50 wards in Chicago. That is kind of the premise behind the title of the presentation. If you were hoping for something different, probably not the presentation. So Lane Uprising is a crowdsourced civic tech platform, and it's making it easy to report bike lane obstructions into one central database. So therefore we can, hold violators accountable, understand what's taking place, and then also be able to use that information to prevent future obstructions. So you should be able to learn what a bike lane obstruction is. So I will teach you. This is a bike lane obstruction. And you can tell because it's a bike lane. So this is actually probably the most famous bike lane obstruction our database has received to even date. This car actually drove through the bus protected lane for quite a while. And why did I start a database for bike lane obstructions, you might ask? Or do I need to have this?
Oh yeah, we should.
Okay.
We should.
I didn't even guess.
Yeah. There it is. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Is this for the recording or something?
I think so.
Okay. All right. So why did I start a database for recording bike lane obstructions, you might ask? The vehicle that you see, that commercial truck in the photo above, actually almost ran me over in 2016. I was in a bike lane. I was waiting for the red light to change. The truck came up next to me, and it turned so sharply to the right that it actually started driving over top of me. I had to actually push myself off of the side of the truck to prevent myself from going under the back wheels. And after that happened, the first thing that came to my mind was this driver didn't know that I was there, and I wanted them to be able to know that I was there. So we all hear that trucks have blind spots, so on and so forth. So I chased after the truck for 2 blocks, and I caught up with the truck as it was just about ready to go under lower whacker in the photo that you see there. The driver begrudgingly rolled down the window, and I very calmly asked, "Do you realize that you almost ran me over?" And he stone-faced said yes, and then he took off again. And I tried to reach out to the company that driver worked for. I tried, getting very creative on social media. I was never able to get past the receptionist. So not only did that driver not care what had happened, but the company that driver worked for also didn't care. 2 weeks afterwards, the first share bike rider in Chicago and the United States was actually killed in Chicago on a divvy in a very similar circumstance to my situation. So, I very well could have been her, and it's something that's just kind of stuck with me. And coincidentally, that very same year, in 2016, Chicago was ranked the #1 biking city in the United States, which confused a lot of us because we knew that that was a very different situation than what was happening on the ground. In reality, there's a lot of room for improvement. Cyclists are still killed in Chicago every year. Many more are injured. The photo that you see above is a ghost bike. Those are laid at the site of a crash that has killed a cyclist as a way to memorialize their lives. In Chicago, we are very lucky that we do have bike lanes. We actually have a few hundred. The last time I did an analysis, there's about 340 miles. However, we know that bike lanes do make it safer to bike. They also make it more enticing for people to try it out. Somebody that's on the fence, females in particular, are much more likely to bike if there are bike lanes present. But our bike lanes don't look like this. They often look like this. People are driving in them, people are parking in them, and it's incredibly unsafe. And as I was doing research for this, I spent about 2 weeks researching this before I actually launched it, just like a beta, type of thing. And as I was interviewing cyclists, I kept on hearing the same thing over and over. And the quote was, "I feel like nobody cares." They felt like the city didn't care. They felt like the companies, the drivers, everybody, but nobody was caring. And, after so long, you just feel kind of helpless. And a lot of cyclists were taking matters into their own hands, which is not good for anyone. Bike lane uprising is not ULOC justice, if anyone's unfamiliar with that term. It means taking your ULOC that's meant to, protect your bike from being stolen and using it to hit cars. We do not recommend that whatsoever. We are more the data approach. Let's collect the data, put it into a database, and find something to, more belonging. So with that being said, it's probably helpful to provide a little bit of background on biking specifically in Chicago. So it's illegal to block bike lanes. Blocking bike lanes is, it can be a fine between $150 to $300. And if you're a corporation and if you're like construction or something like that, it can be like into the thousands. And it's illegal to bike on sidewalks if you're 12 years old or older. So that means that if you're 12, you haven't actually taken driver's training until you're 16. So you don't actually know the rules of the road. And now we're legally requiring those, adolescents to be on the road. Females are less common to bike, particularly in Chicago, than male cyclists. Studies show females are also, females and minorities are statistically more likely to be killed and injured while cycling. And South and West Side neighborhoods in Chicago have low to no bike lanes. Police in minority neighborhoods use biking on sidewalks as a way to stop it. They've gone on the record many, many times and stated that is a part of their policing practice. So it's illegal for them to, bike on the sidewalk, however. And what our database has proven is that the Chicago Police Department actually ranks number 8 for top bike lane obstructors themselves. So kind of an issue there. And so what we learned is to better understand the problem, we can actually identify unique solutions. So this person actually contacted me one morning and stated, "Hey, I think I'm in your database. I think I might be submitted to your database soon." It's actually a police officer. You can see the police markings. They had a police license plate, they had police across their thing, and they asked to be removed. And I said, no, everything. If you were an obstruction, you remain in the database. So with that being said, so how does Bike Lane Uprising work? Contributors sign up to be a member to be able to submit to the database. We want the database to be a place for really good data. Rather than just having lots and lots and lots of submissions, we would like to get better information, more like high quality information, be able to also reach out if there's any questions. Sometimes companies or the city or different people actually have questions that they want followed up regarding specific obstructions. And that provides the opportunity for us to allow people to remain anonymous. So if you do not have legal status in the country, or if you have too much status and you don't want people to know that you're submitting to this database, there's that line of anonymity. If you submit to 311 or something like that and you want to be followed up on, your contact information is actually public information. Anyone can FOIA that, meaning if you had an altercation with that driver of that car, that driver can actually FOIA your private information. Once you sign up to be a contributor, you can document bike lane obstructions and then submit those to the main database. And then from that main database, we can find trends. So far, as of this month, contributors have submitted over 10,000 bike lane obstructions. This is the 20th month that Bike Lane Uprising has existed. And that's from 2 weeks after a research phase. So it's just been thrown right out there into the world, and we've been collecting good data and iterating on it and building relationships as we've gone. Those 10,000 bike lane obstructions are equivalent to as much as $3 million in unrealized revenue. So it's in a very rudimentary stage right now, and I would say as we make it easier to submit, as we're gets out, those numbers are going to go up exponentially. So they're big numbers. And last summer, it spread via word of mouth outside of Chicago, and also once I started to get meetings with the Department of Finance and the Department of Transportation in Chicago, the media picked up on it. It was on anything from the Washington Post to US News. I think it's been mentioned on NPR like 5 times, so it's kind of crazy. And what we've learned is that by collecting all of these bike lane obstructions into one central database, we realized that by having multiple cities submitting to one database, we can actually have a stronger voice. So Cisco, they're parking in bike lanes all across the United States. It's not just in Chicago. It's Portland, it's Nashville, it's DC, it's everywhere. It's a part of their business operating model. And in Minneapolis, just this month, or maybe last month, US Foods, who does a very similar practice, they were documented by a contributor to be submitted to the database. 1/2 hour later, that same exact truck was involved in running over a cyclist. So Minneapolis had actually just joined Lane Uprising's database, and within a couple of weeks, they reached out and were like, "Hey, this just happened. Do you guys have records of US Foods parking illegally in bike lanes?" And I was like, "Why, yes, I do." And it's across the United States. So we have, background information on this. We have had some success stories. So some companies, they do not condone parking in bike lanes. I think cyclists are often actually surprised by just how positive some of the companies are. So Bona Beef had been submitted to the database 5 times, and it was in the same exact spot at the same exact time of day. And so I just reached out on Twitter. I was like, "Hey, Bona Beef, what's up? Why are they doing this?" And they responded immediately. It was, it seemed like they were very much going to take, care of the matter, and, that was it. The very next morning, I woke up and Bona Beef had been submitted to the database again. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this is an old submission prior to, that sort of thing. And I looked at the notes. The notes are always very funny from the contributors. And the person's like, somebody at Bona Beef didn't get the memo. So I'm like, all right. So I reached out to Bona Beef, and they were mortified at that point in time. I actually talked to one of the family members of the franchise, super, super nice guy. And he's like, "We are so embarrassed. You're taking care of this, full training, that sort of thing. And we'd love to cater your next event." We were so new at that point in time that we hadn't had any events. So when they catered, it was, for our only event. And as of today, they still have not been submitted to the database again. I am a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian for a very, very, very long time. At no point in time did I ever think I was going to have such great, sentiments towards a company called Bona Beef. But I do. So I think that goes to show a lot. And there they are. They actually came through. Haven't been in the database since. So they actually packed lunches for everyone at an event last year. It was very cute. So everyone submits to the database for the bike lane obstructions. And we, as in we, me, and Chili, who just came in, we map those bike lane obstructions. So we map them via pinpoint map, so you can, actually see exactly where it is, click on it, see the photo that goes along with it. But we all, if anyone has a background with mapping things, if you have a hotspot of, a place that a lot of, things are happening, if the address is exactly the same, it just looks like one thing, one point. So that's not good. So you also need to have a heat map. When people submit to the database, they're able to submit from multiple categories of bike lane obstruction. So you have 6 categories. You have your private owner vehicles, you have your taxis, Ubers, liveries, and construction and municipal vehicles. And what we've been able to do is we actually put in filters, so the heat maps you can actually view based on those heat maps. So you can kind of go through and see where the company hotspots are relative to the taxis, Ubers, and liveries. So we actually launched this new filtering feature, and literally the next day I had a screen share with Lyft and to show them this data. And they're like, this is awesome. And their first response was, this is just like super, super clear that, there's a couple of areas in particular that we'd very easily be able to geofence our drivers from. So they shared some information from one of their projects in San Francisco on Valencia Street where they're doing this. So more to come on that. Private owners. We know that all of this data, we need to see what the trends are year over year. So we're starting to collect and analyze the data year over year. So right now we're working on a 2018, bike lane obstruction summary report, and looking at, just like how can we map these and categorize so that one, we can search the database off of really cool metrics and be able to see it very visually, qualitative, but then also be able to get those hard numbers for things like who is the #1 police district that's receiving all of these bike lane obstructions. It's Police District 1, probably not a big surprise, 42%. And they're the downtown police precinct, so no big surprise there. Police beats. So what I found is that police beats, they might actually find some of this information useful because if they're low on ticket numbers, they'll know where to go. And then Ward 42, Alderman Riley, who's been a pretty big supporter of what we've been doing from the beginning. There's been, for the most part, companies respond pretty well to us reaching out. But there's some that double down on their practices. And when it happens downtown, I'm able to reach out to Alderman Riley on Twitter, and he responds very quickly, usually within the hour, and gets it taken care of. It's pretty fun. We have found that buffered bike lanes make up 39% of all of the bike lane obstructions that were submitted in 2018. However, you have to look at it a little bit closer because when you look at it by mile, it's actually protected bike lanes by mile that are being, submitted the most. So protected bike lanes have 93 obstructions, per mile, whereas like buffered are 39. So when you start to look at it a little bit closer and a little bit closer, you find some more interesting elements there. So, and because we're all submitting to one database, we're able to see what are the macro level trends of these categories. So in Chicago, 45% of, Chicago submissions are by private owner vehicles, and we can actually see it by cities. So do we have a similar, trend that's happening as to DC and Nashville and so on and so forth? So what we found is that in DC, they have 11% more company vehicles. So that's kind of interesting. And out of the database, most of the submissions are coming from Chicago right now. We expect that to kind of level off, over time. However, 68% of all auto submissions have an Illinois license plate. When I started this, I didn't really know who the bike lane instructors were going to be. Out of the goodness of my heart, I just assumed it was going to be Michigan, Wisconsin, all the states that might not have bike lanes. However, the qualitative and quantitative data being paired together into the database has proven that yes, we know from the data that it's Illinois license plates. However, from the photos, we can see that most of them have Chicago stickers. So they know Chicago. We also can identify repeat offenders by license plate states, by companies, so on and so forth. There have been, with 8,000 obstructions, we did an analysis and 450 license plates have been reported more than once. And 18% of all auto submissions were identified as repeat offenders, so those 450. That means that they're doing it a lot. So one license plate in particular was submitted 15 times. The car wasn't even worth that much. The car that was below that was like 13 times, and again, it wasn't worth that. And these weren't like, okay, these people are, I'm just going in for, 5 minutes, I gotta get my coffee, or those types of situations. It's like, no, this is where I park for work, and I leave my car there the entire day, and I did it once, and I learned that it's okay, so I did it again, and I did it again, and now I know that I have a free parking spot in downtown Chicago. So we've identified well over 1,000 companies that are repeat offenders. You can see, from the trend over there, those are the top, and it really kind of slides off. So no surprise, Uber, taxis, USPS, and FedEx are the top 4 bike lane obstructors. However, we have a lot of unidentified ride shares, and what we've found is that we think that Lyft would probably be in the top 4. if they had better markings on their cars. So typically lifts don't have stickers on the back of their cars, and typically a cyclist is coming up from behind. So it's easier to see that it's an Uber versus a Lyft. However, they typically do, ride for both or drive for both. And we've had some like actual successes and like impacts on infrastructure. So when a news report of Bike Lane Uprising was shared on NBC last summer, the very next week, our hotspots had bollards installed. So no coincidence there. And I have had meetings with the Department of Finance, the Department of Transportation. The Department of Transportation, I was so surprised just how progressive they've been. They've actually been, kind of spearheading the success of Bike Lane Uprising as well, and really interested in the data. Like they're very excited in the data that we're collecting and trying to see what opportunities there are to capitalize on that. So, and the mayor has even taken notice. So he's like some of our tweets, or someone that does his Twitter account. I don't know. And like I said, we've had some screen shares with Lyft to try and figure out some opportunities there. And we're also digging into publicly available municipal type of information. So a lot of commercial vehicles, if you drive over state lines or if you have a certain amount of passengers, you're required to get a U.S. Department of Transportation number, and that number makes it very easy to find a lot of information on that company, specifically on crashes, fatalities, injuries, and from that we can actually make it a lot easier to identify some of these vehicles and reach out to those companies and see if there's an increased risk for those elements. So we're stitching together some pretty large data sets. So there's, in a 2-year span window, there's 1.5 million companies listed, and those companies are involved with 270,000 crashes, over 3 million violations, and license plates and so on and so forth. And then from that, it's not just about bike lane obstructions. Bike lane obstructions are not the only thing that make it unsafe to bike. I don't know if anybody here is a cyclist or bikes infrequently, but just the lane quality, it makes it very unsafe. I don't know if you walked here from Emporium, but they're putting in the metal steel sheets out there over a Shiro. It's like, could this get any worse? And we also know that winter is not kind to anything in Chicago, let alone the streets. So this Sunday, we're actually hosting a day of service, and everyone is adopting bike lanes. While I own 0 bike lanes, I am adopting all 250 segments out. And so far, as of today, 70% have been adopted. And everyone's going out, they're documenting the lane conditions. Are there broken bollards? Are there potholes? Is it faded paint? What we learned is that this is really, really useful information to the Department of Transportation. As of right now, they've been doing a lot of their data based on what lane was updated last off of an Excel spreadsheet. So this gives them like eyes on the ground information, qualitative, quantitative, mapped, everything. And from that, they can plan their summer maintenance work. So I think it shows what we can do with our little army of Bike Lane Uprising people. And like I said, 70% are adopted, and our database is also proven to be useful in times of tragedy. So a cyclist was killed in Chicago last summer in Grapetown, and when I saw the vehicle that was involved with running her over, I instantly recognized the company that owned that vehicle, and it was a company, Lakeshore Recycling Company, LRS, and I instantly recognized that they were repeat bike lane offenders from our database. Had the database not existed at that point in time, we would have never have known that they had a history already. 2 days after her death, their drivers were noted blowing through stop signs, parking in bike lanes, yelling at cyclists who were trying to document the situation. And as of just recently, this number is actually old. It's up to 17. So they've actually been submitted 17 times now. So they had a history. They they were a part of a terrible crash that killed a mother of 2 young daughters. And afterwards, they continued with that behavior. So nothing has changed. And And again, the company that almost ran me over, they have been submitted to the database, I think 6 times. And I tried again last summer towards the end, like maybe towards the fall. I was like, oh, they got submitted. I'm like, all right, I'm going to try again. Try to contact them. And I think the fleet manager was new. And I'm sure it was like the strangest phone call ever because I'm like, hey, my name's Christina Whitehouse. I made this database called Lane Uprising. Your company was the inspiration. You guys almost killed me. And here's the serial numbers. And he gave me his email address to send him the information of his drivers, but they have been submitted after that as well. So a little bit of insights. Over 70 cities have actually signed up for Lane Uprising. Like I said, this is very, very, very new. It's still like more in the proof of concept stage. We're actually rebuilding a lot, so trying to make it more user friendly. And as it becomes easier to submit and we get more technologies built in, we're going to see those numbers grow exponentially. And we've been building relationships. The relationships with city decision makers are really the things that have been able to catapult us forward. And our data helps provide the qualitative, quantitative linked information. If you have one, it's really great. If you have the other, it's really great. But if you have them together, it's amazing. Because one without the other just provides more questions. And we're able to break through so many myths and biases. Because everyone's like, well, there probably wasn't anywhere to park. And it's like, well, in the photo, you can see that the entire street is empty. This just died. The battery's out. And, we're really able to help reduce strain of city financial resources versus, just be like a thorn in the side. We could have been like, okay, we're going to create a petition and, call every hour on the hour, but it's like, no, that's not going to help anything. We're able to provide information for the people that know how to do their job even better. And because of that, I think, it's gotten a lot of reception from those people. So ways that you can help. Don't block bike lanes. I know what you're thinking. I'll just do it that one time. No, don't do it. All right. Also, tell your friends and family, your coworkers about Bike Lane Uprising. Telling people in the moment, in the lane, is not going to solve anything. It's going to cause frustration. Don't do it. It's not worth it. But having those one-on-one conversations, if I tell your, uncle to not do it, probably not going to work out. If you tell your uncle not to do it, it might be a little bit better. You can sign up to be a contributor at bikeLaneUprising.com. You can also sign up to be a volunteer. And obviously, people with tech backgrounds, super, super useful. We're having the Community Day of Service this weekend. If you're in town, stop out. There's going to be a party as well. I'm going to be selling some Blue merchandise down at Emporium a little bit later on. We also take sponsorships. And then also, there's a new thing that I came up with the other day. So in Lyft, you can change your name, okay? You can change your name to I Love Safe Bike Lanes. And it kind of provides a little bit of insight, and it trains the person to hear over and over and over, this person loves safe bike lanes. And they actually have to say it out, I think. So kind of fun. And also, when you are, obviously people are using ride shares. So, with knowing that, tell your friends and family, instead of, having somebody pick you up directly outside of somewhere where there is a bike lane, maybe go just around the corner. So injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Keep that in mind. It might seem very small, but there's actually a whole, background behind this. And thank you. I have social medias. It's a very snarky kind of account, so follow at will. Any questions? No?
Sorry, no questions. You made a data you might handle, like 5%, that's something like using cameras like from cities or nothing like that.
No.
There's been some projects things called the way of things. They put like sensors and cameras and like posts around the city. They collect some information.
So there's a little bit of background in that as well. So a lot of it, especially in Chicago, it's homeland security cameras and things like that. So there's, even to get access to those cameras, you typically want to have a court case until there are movies and entry and so on and so forth. And just constant recording, there's some potential that as well. But I get where you're heading in the cameras, because there's a lot of opportunity with that, especially when you get into the chaos and stuff. All right, well, thank you.